Hi, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I am here today with Shea Henderson from Empty Bobbin Studios. Hi, Shea.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's awesome. And you just actually have a new book, too.
Yes. It's called School of Sewing, and today we're actually be making one of the projects from it.
Oh, that's very cool. It's a great little book.
Yeah.
So what do we need to make this project?
Sure. We're making the tech case from the book, which is a customizable fitted.
It's going to look like this?
Yeah. It's for your iPad or a tablet. Yes.
So awesome. Slide it right in there.
Yes, and it's got a buttonhole. You're going to learn to use your buttonhole foot. This is
Oh,
very
that's
exciting.
huge. Yes, I'm actually very excited about that myself. So what do we need to make
Okay,
it?
you need some fat quarters, and we're using this bundle from Cotton and Steel, but you use 4 fat quarters of fabric for the inside, the outside, the pocket. All of that will be in 4 fat quarters. We're also going to be using some fusible fleece, and we're going to be using some woven fusible interfacing. Some people call it Shape Flex. Some people know it as SF101. Yes, so we're going to be using those 2 types of interfacing today. The other thing you're going to need is a button, and the button is anywhere between 5/8 of an inch to an inch, and we're just going to choose a fun,
nice
colorful
big button.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Exciting. So the other thing you're going to need is this printable template that's on our website. And it's also available there with a formula page for a fill-in-the-blank sheet for figuring out the measurements for your cutting. And you're going to go ahead and cut that template out, and we'll use it here in just a minute to cut some fabric.
That's really cool. So that will be available on the site.
Yep.
All right, perfect.
Yep.
So what do we do now?
Now we have to measure the device. And the important rule is the all-important measure twice, cut once comes into play here. So we're going to measure with 3 dimensions on your device. And you're going to want to write these down. This is all available on the printable template, so don't worry if you feel like we're kind of skipping around, but it's all on a fill-in-the-blank sheet.
Well, and one of the cool things about this is that all of us have different size devices.
Exactly.
So you could use this for anything that you wanted a little pocket for.
And
So
if
once you know the size.
Yep, exactly.
Perfect.
So we're going to measure, and I'm just going to use a ruler. So we're using the width of the device, and you're always going to want to round up to the nearest 1/4 inch. You never ever want to round down.
Okay, no one ever want to say like that 16, 15.
No, nobody likes to know. No, we don't have time for that. So we always want to round up. You never want to round down because you would make an iPad sleeve that doesn't fit your device, and that would be bad.
That would be bad.
So if you find that it's like right at the 1/4 inch mark, go ahead and bump it up to the next one just to be on the safe side. But you're going to measure the width and the height and also the thickness. So laying it flat and putting it down here and getting it eye level, and you want to measure the thickness of your device and write those 3 numbers down. Okay,
perfect.
And now we're done measuring, which is exciting. So we're going to
I'm just going to set this down here.
Sounds
Don't forget
perfect.
it. I know there are lives. We have our lives on
Yes,
this.
I would not forget that. So you're noticing we're going to have 2 different shapes or 2 different sizes cut. The interfacing and the fleece, we're actually going to cut a little bit smaller, and I'll explain why here in a minute. But we're going to make some cuts on fabric for the exterior, the interior, and the pocket. And to cut those, we're going to make 4 numbers here. Measurement A, if you'll hang with me, is the width plus the depth plus 1 inch. I'll repeat that. The measurement A is the width plus the depth plus 1 inch, which gives us our seam allowance. That's measurement A. Measurement B is going to be the height plus the depth plus 1 inch. So the height and the depth and 1 inch gives us measurement B. Okay, so you've got measurement A and measurement B. And then measurement C and D is what we'll use for here. Measurement C is simply the width and the depth. We're not adding 1 inch there. Okay, that's measurement C, width and depth. Measurement D is the height and the depth. You're not going to add
now this, I'm not a numbers girl, so this all sounds a little bit overwhelming to me, but you have this cool page that they can print out and they can put their numbers in and it will tell you.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. So
and
it's just a fill-in-the-blank page.
Yeah. Simple math. We're not doing anything with 16ths or 7/8 or anything like that. Very simple. So you're going to fill those in. Now, for the measurement A and B, so for instance, if mine was 9 and 11, so I would cut 9 inches by 11 inches for 2 linings, 2 exterior pieces, and then 1 pocket. Okay, that's the A and the B. And then we're going to put that to the side, and we're going to do the C and the D measurements. So if it was 9 and 11, we're going to be cutting 8 by 10.
Okay, so it's just an inch smaller.
And we're going to cut 3 of the woven fusible interfacing and 4 from the fusible fleece, which seems like a lot, but I'll explain in a minute why we're doing 4.
So we need two outside bag pieces, 2 lining pieces, 1 pocket piece.
Yes.
And then you need 2 of your fusible fleece and 4 of your fusible fleece.
Seems like a lot.
And then
3 of those.
3 of this
woven.
really woven,
which is my
flex.
favorite interfacing. I use that all the time. And then the last thing you're going to cut is this flap since we need a flap for our tablet cover. And you're going to use that template page and cut out the template, and you're going to cut along the dotted line. We'll get to this solid line a little bit later, but you're going to cut one lining, one exterior, which kind of is an accent color, and then one from the woven and one from the fusible fleece.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So how do we get started?
All right, then we start fusing all the things.
Okay.
So the thing we want to do here, and I'll use the pocket as an example. Move over here and fuse.
All right.
And then when we,
let me move a little bit so we can see what we're doing here.
And if you remember that we had those measurements and they were like an inch off, when we fuse the interfacing to the back of it, there's going to be a little bit of fabric, actually a ½ an inch all the way around. And the reason I like to do that is it kind of reduces the bulk on the inside of the project. Makes it a little easier to sew. So that's our pocket. And then you're going to also fuse that with the lining the same way. So that gives up all of our woven interfacing. And then when it comes time to do the fusible fleece on the exterior, to make it nice and thick and padded, we're going to fuse the fusible fleece to the inside. And we're actually going to use 2 layers. We're not going to fuse them all at the same time. We're going to fuse one, let it cool down for a second, and then fuse the other one.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
And my iron sometimes doesn't like to touch the fusible fleece, even if it's the non-fusible side. And we're going to make sure the bumpy side is touching the wrong side of the fabric.
Okay, bumps to the wrong side.
Bumpy is the glue. And then I like to just kind of flip this over and fuse on the fabric side.
Okay.
Sometimes my iron likes that a little better.
I think the irons of the world will thank you.
Sometimes my iron spits water at me and it gets mad.
There we go.
All right, so the next one, we're going to let it cool for just a second. You kind of wave it around.
There you go.
Yeah, and we'll do the second layer. You just want to layer it right on top. And again, there's that ½ inch all the way around so that we don't have to sew through that later on, which is kind of nice. Sometimes it's hard to sew through lots of thick layers. So.
Okay, so then to recap this, what we've got is we've got the 2 exterior pieces that have 2 layers of our fusible fleece.
Yep.
We have a pocket that has the shape flex.
Yes.
And we have our lining that also has the shape flex and just 1 layer on
Just
those.
1 layer, yep.
And so 2 pieces of that. And then we have our little flap right here. And again, the lining has the shape flex, and the outside piece is where you put the fusible. So you're always putting your fusible on the outside.
Yeah. And the flap only has 1 layer of fusible fleece.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
okay,
yes, it does
good.
have the fusible fleece.
All right, so the flap has 1 layer, and then this is going to be your lining piece, correct?
That's right.
Okay, perfect. So now what do we do next?
Now we're going to get to some of the really exciting stuff where we get to customize this to fit what we want. So we're going to make this pocket, and if you'll grab the pocket piece.
There's the pocket piece.
Yep. We are just going to fold it wrong sides together and give it a little press. And you can kind of decide if you want that little divided part in the pocket to fit maybe your phone or your cords, or maybe if you have a stylus or a pen you like to use, you can always stick that down in there. But what we're going to do is if you'll hand me one of the exterior pieces, we'll just kind of show the before and after
here. And the
here.
exterior's the one with the foam.
Yep. So we're going to, or the fleece, and we're going to take this and put it raw edges along the sides and bottom, and this is the folded part right here.
That's ingenious. Yeah. That's awesome.
So it's kind of lined on the inside and outside all in one step.
So should I sew a top stitch on this first?
Yep, we're going to sew a top stitch right across the top.
Let me do that really quick here, because that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Let me get my thing set up right.
The interfacing just makes that pocket just be sturdy and
well, not only that, but it's completely lined because you folded it in half.
Yep.
That's a great idea.
I love that.
All right, here we go.
Perfect. So then you would just place it with the raw edges along the bottom and the sides. You can trim those threads if you want.
Just trim that thread.
Perfect. And then since we're going to sew the whole project with ½ inch seam allowances, you can base this in place by pinning and sewing a ¼ inch all the way around. And you can see we've done that here, where we've sewn a ¼ inch all the way around. You can stop and pivot, or you can sew off the edge. It doesn't matter because it's not going to show.
Okay, perfect.
So then it's time to make the divided part. And you can not do this if you don't want to, but I kind of like it because you can stick your phone down in here, or you could add a second layer and stick a pin down in there. I just recommend sticking your device in here, then taking it out before you go to the sewing machine. But
yeah, but it gives you the exact size.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
And I like to use, there's a little point turner that we have here.
Oh, okay, here.
And I like to grab my ruler. Sorry.
There we go.
grab a ruler, and then kind of, if I know where I'm gonna have it be, I can mark with a point turner, and it leaves just a little bit of a mark in my fabric. I can see when I'm sewing,
Oh, yeah.
but I don't have a mark to erase.
Great
I just
idea.
like to use that, yeah.
Great idea.
So then this side is totally done.
It's already done.
It's done.
Isn't that
Yep.
amazing? Magic of television. There we go.
Put that here. Now we get to do the most exciting part, which is the flap and the buttonhole.
All right.
The moment we've been waiting
I'm actually
for.
really excited about that. You know, a lot of people are afraid of buttonholes, and they're just
Yep.
not, you know, the feet we
Yep.
have now makes it so easy.
Exactly. And if you want to, do you mind grabbing your buttonhole foot from
I
your
don't mind
machine?
it.
We'll talk about it a little bit.
Are we going to do that before we sew it?
We're just going to talk about it a little bit before we go to the machine, and then we'll kind of get it all going.
Perfect.
Okay, so the buttonhole foot that comes with your machine probably looks like this. And most machines come with one, but sometimes people see them and they think, that's a bit of a monstrosity. I'm just going to put that away.
You're like, I don't know what that does.
I'm going to pretend that I don't know it's there. So it's one of those things that comes with machines, but people don't usually use them. And you'll notice that there's a little slider on it. And the reason that slider is there is because that is where you put your button. You might think, why am I putting the button in the presser foot, in the foot? So you put it in here and you kind of squish it down.
Very cool.
So it fits. And that is what tells your machine how big to make
The
the
buttonhole.
buttonhole. So
it's really automated. You know, when I was sewing on, you just went, you like draw lines
Yeah.
because you want to. So this is so much easier.
It's like hands-free sewing. So we will get to that exciting part here in just a minute, but I wanted to show you that is what we're getting to with the buttonhole foot.
Very cool.
The thing you want to do when you're sewing this is you're going to put the two flat pieces right sides together.
All right.
Just like this. And sometimes people get nervous about sewing a curve, and so I give two recommendations. Let's lower the stitch length and make it a little bit smaller on your machine because it's a little easier to sew a curve if the stitches aren't as long.
Okay.
And then if you'll notice on this template, there's a solid line that goes around it, and that's a 1/2 inch difference between the edge. We're going to cut along here. And you can use your pen, Jenny. It's very exciting. Bust out all your elementary school cutting skills. Cutting
There we
paper.
go.
Just going to cut around here. All right. And I like to mark on the woven fusible interfacing side. It's just a little easier. We're going to center it along there. And you'll notice we can now mark around here with a pen.
You know, that's great for beginners. That's going to be a real safety tip for them.
Yep, because it makes it easier to see if you're on track, and it gives you a nice, pretty curve.
One of the things that's cool about this too is that it's just going to make it really easy for people to see the line and sew around it, and takes the fear out of it.
Yes,
You know,
it
for
does. Stay on the line.
I mean, if you don't, for people who don't have that steadiness, and this is your outside flap, so you want it to
be nice.
You want it to be pretty.
If your machine happens to have the kneel down feature, this is a great time to use it because you can pause at the kneel down, lift your presser foot, and kind of readjust as you're sewing around.
So I'm just putting these right
sides together, and you're going to sew a 1/2 inch seam all the way around. You're going to leave this straight edge unsewn.
Okay.
Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and end because we're going to be turning it right side out, and we don't want to have those stitches pop open.
Back stitch here, and we're just going to stay right on that line. Boy, that line is really helpful.
Well, good.
I'm even slowing down to stay on it. Well, and the curve part I think is important so that it just stays with a nice lid. There have been times where I've done something and that outside lid isn't perfect, and boy, it shows.
Yep.
But this line makes it easy.
To make a big difference.
On the home stretch now, and we're gonna back stitch again. All right, let's see.
All right. Looks perfect.
Hey, I did pretty good right there.
Awesome.
Okay, now
so now you're going to take and cut that seam allowance just right down the center, down to about 1/4 inch. And you might be thinking, why didn't we just sew 1/4 inch to begin with? But it's just easier to sew with a thicker seam allowance when you're sewing a curve, and then trim it down. It's kind of like a garment sewing technique.
All right.
And if you feel like you need to clip a little bit, you can around that curve.
I think
yours is quite small enough that you don't have to. That's
small.
good. That's good.
And then we're turning it?
Yep.
All right.
Turn it around, and we'll press it.
All right.
Ta-da.
Look at that. How
Looking
cute.
good.
All right.
So we could stop here and just attach it, but that wouldn't necessarily give us the professional look that we're going for.
Okay.
So we're going to do some top stitching. Are you a fan of top stitching?
I love top stitching.
Okay,
I do.
So we're going to do some top stitching, and I can show you guys a little trick that I love.
Okay.
I like to use an edge or a ditch foot. Does your machine have one of those? And I can
sure
show
does.
you. You don't have to use it today if you don't want to, but I would like to show it because it's fun.
I'll try it.
Try it. Okay. So this is the edge or ditch foot. If you don't have one that comes with your machine, you might have an overcasting foot. You're looking for a foot that has a blade right down the center. You can kind of see where there's a blade in the middle. And what's great about it is it can run right along the edge of your project or the seam of a project, and you can move your needle to the left or the right, like a 1/16 of an inch or so, and it gives like a perfect top stitch distance. So it's not wobbly, it's really nice and straight. So you can use that and just kind of move your needle to the left a little bit.
You know, it's so funny, Shea. Our machines generally come with them, you know, like a smattering of feet, but we don't really know what they're for. So this is really helpful. Okay, so now... So am I leaving my stitch length short?
You would leave it short since you're going on a curve still. Yeah. So you're just going to go, I typically aim for like a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch. Whatever I feel like looks good.
So now, the way this looks to me right here is my ditch foot is on the edge, so I'm sewing way off to this side.
Yeah, the blade is going to run right along the fabric.
So I want to move your needle over to the left.
Yep.
Okay.
And you don't have to worry about back stitching this time since we're not turning it inside out.
Let me see. How far do I... I'm just going to move it as far as I can.
Safety. And sometimes if people feel like their machine just won't grab that fabric since they're sewing through some thickness, we're going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance when we sew this flap on. So if you want to start actually on the fabric, you can. You don't have to start ahead of it, you know, or at the beginning of your project. Sometimes starting on the fabric keeps your machine from...
Now, I'm a pretty good top stitcher, so I'm kind of anxious to see what happens with this little foot, because I'm a really good eyeballer.
Yes.
But now I'm following this little guide, and I'm not looking at my stitches, so... I should cross my fingers on my other hand.
It should just ride along that guide just perfectly. And it works that way if you have 2 seams next to each other, like on a bag or a kid's clothing project. I use it a lot when I'm sewing my kids' clothes.
There we go.
All right, what do you think?
Wow, that is pretty good. That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, good deal. So you can see here, we've just got a nice little top stitch around there. And now it's time to transfer the buttonhole placement on our template. So I'm going to step over here and start some buttonhole sewing, but first we're going to mark this template on your flap. So you can see that it's here on the flap. There's a line. We're going to fold this in half. There's a lot of fancy ways you could transfer, but this is kind of how I like to do it. I'm going to use this mark, and I'm going to...
Oh, that's a good idea too. I probably would have cut a hole in the paper, but this makes it better.
And what I might do here is just mark this so I know where the beginning and end of that line is. So when I fold it, the line kind of disappears.
There we go.
Okay, so then I'm going to mark right here. That is where my buttonhole is going to go when we sew it.
Perfect.
Okay, so now we are ready for the buttonhole. And if you'll remember, we put our button in the buttonhole foot and squished it down nice and tight so we know how big to make that buttonhole. Okay,
you really think I can do this?
You can totally do this, Jenny.
Okay, I'm game. I'll try it.
Okay, and I recommend...
I think I was just putting it on backwards.
The button will go back behind.
Okay.
Yeah, and it will snap on just like your regular presser foot. And you'll notice there's some little kind of crosshairs, if you will. There's some marks on the side and a mark right in the center of where that needle goes down. That's telling you where the needle's going to hit. Okay. It's like a crosshair. So what you'll want to do is make sure your machine is set to the buttonhole stitch selector. So it's this rectangular basic.
Okay.
Yep.
There we go.
So you got it on there? All right. You don't have to do any kind of, there are lots, some machines come with lots of different buttonhole stitches.
Does this buttonhole,
we just want the basic one.
There's this thing.
The lever has to come down. Look at you, you're an A student, Jenny. So you have to lower
I knew that was for something.
And that's the thing that people sometimes forget is they forget to lower that lever, and then the machine doesn't know where to stop making the buttonhole, so it just makes this really long buttonhole. And by the time you discovered that you didn't lower it, it's
and you
too
have
late.
A little ribbon.
Yes, a lot or a lot of ribbon, depending on how quickly you realize it.
So we have to change stitches or anything?
Just change to the buttonhole selector, and then you change the foot and lower the lever. Yes. Okay. So now you could, and I recommend this for people who if they're their first time trying it, is to try it on some practice material that's about the same thickness. Because if you are like really unsure about it, you've just sewn this beautifully top stitched curve flap, and you don't want to.
But you're sure I'm not going to mess this up?
I'm confident.
Okay, all right then.
Confident or really brave. We'll see. Yeah. So we're gonna put this underneath there, and you'll notice that I'll show real quick. The mark is here to here.
Mm-hmm.
And the buttonhole foot will start at the front and sew backward first.
Okay.
So we're going to put our buttonhole, our needle right over the front, the one that's closest to the curve.
All right.
So put that in there. You'll want to make sure that your
Slide
flaps,
this up.
you know, going straight so your buttonhole's not, you know, curving to the left or right.
All right, so right there, and does that look pretty
I
straight?
think it looks straight.
I think it looks pretty straight.
Okay, so sometimes I like to lower my needle down, and you'll always want to consult your manual because each machine is different. Some have little, you know.
So these little crosshairs are helping me center up the line for my button.
Yep, they are. Yep, they are.
Okay, so
you've got it in there. Now, this is like hands-free sewing. When I taught my friends how to do this, they swore their machines worked like magic that night because it just does it on its own. Make sure your buttonhole's selected. Got that lever down.
I've got my lever down, and it has to be. Is it behind or in front of this little pig?
It depends on your machine. This one needs to be behind.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. All right, make sure my flap is straight.
Yep.
I have to say I'm a little nervous.
You don't even have to.
There it goes.
You have your hands off. Like, look, Mom, no hands. And then your machine will eventually just stop. Sometimes they'll beep at you. It's like, hey, I'm done.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I am going to become a buttonhole fanatic.
Buttonholes and everything, right?
Hey, this is really cool.
Isn't it cool?
Yeah.
And people ignore this foot in their machine. They just don't even try
I
to
can
use
file
it.
my nails.
And see, it'll go, and then it will probably beep at you. Maybe it won't. We'll see. It'll stop. Ta-da! So that means I'm done. You can stop and lower, or raise your pressure foot, take it off.
OMG. My grandson told me that means oh my grandma, by the way.
Oh, my grandma.
OMG.
That's funny.
Oh my grandma. All right, here we go. Look at
Okay, so it's a beautiful
Dun, dun,
buttonhole,
dun.
but you'll notice a button won't go through it yet, so we get to take a pin and a seam ripper, and we are going to take a pin, like just a regular old straight pin.
Okay.
These flower head pins will
There you
work. And we're gonna rip this open, but so that we don't rip through the entire flap, we're gonna take the pin and just place it right here, right along where that edge of the buttonhole foot is, or buttonhole is. And we're gonna use a seam ripper.
I think this machine comes with
Oh,
one.
wonderful.
So
There you go. And then you can just dig in the bottom part and carefully cut your way up.
Right. Now here's what I'm doing. I'm putting the long piece all the way through.
Yep. And
And
carefully
just
push
sliding
through.
slowly forward.
Yeah, nice and straight. And then when you get to the pin, you'll stop. Just like that. That's
Very
good. You can take the pin out, and now our button will go right through there.
All right, here's our button. We'll check that out.
Yep.
And look at that,
Yep.
right through.
Perfect.
There we go.
So what you want to do, there's just one last little step you could do, and we're going to switch back to a regular presser foot, and we would sew across here just to kind of base that down to get it nice and, you know, put together.
Just like quickly?
Yeah, you can do that if you want to, yeah. And you can raise that lever if you already got raised. There we go. And we're just going to do, just be 1/4 of an inch, just a simple basting stitch across the top. It'll just keep it from shifting when we sew this all together.
And then what is next?
Okay, next is like putting it all together. It's going to be all coming together pretty quickly here. Okay, so you've got the flap done, and you have this exterior totally done. You're going to take the other exterior, and you're going to put the flap on it. And you want the exteriors to face each other.
Okay.
And then you're going to sew them across here. You're going to center it so there's like a little bit of a space on either side.
All right.
Okay. And the space is going to vary depending on your device. So if this looks different than yours, it's probably because your dimensions are different than ours. So you're going to place it here and stitch across there. And we've already got one done here.
Perfect.
So this is what it will look like. And so the exterior is ready to go. So you're going to take the front.
Because you've
Actually,
already
this
done
is
the
the front. And this is the back, because this will come around to the front.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to put these right sides together. And you want the pocket and the flap to be at opposite ends.
Okay.
If you have it like this, that's bad.
That's not going to work.
That's not going to work. So you're going to put it like this, and you can use Clover Wonder clips, or you can use pins, but we're going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance on all sides, except for the tops of the sides and the bottom. Make sure that you don't sew larger than a 1/2 inch seam allowance, because if you do, then you just made your device, your tech case too small.
Okay, so we're just going to sew down this side and...
You need a little help every once in a while, yeah.
And I put a couple of pins in here just to anchor it. And
You want to back stitch up at the top where the flap is, just because we're going to be turning it right side out, and you don't want to lose some of your seams.
You want to kind of just pivot here on the corner?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You can pivot. It could sew off the edge. Either way. There we go. Perfect. We're going to do the exact same thing with the lining. And you can, I've started to pin it, you continue to pin it, or you can take those pins out. This will be a little easier to sew because it's not as thick.
And we're still working that 1/2 inch.
Yep. And the bottom, you're going to leave at least 4 inches open at the bottom to turn it. So sew along both sides and then the bottom, but leave about a 4-inch opening in the bottom. Okay, so now you're gonna clip the corners. So what we've done is we've got the lining sewn right sides together and the exterior sewn right sides together. The exterior is gonna be a lot thicker. We're gonna clip some corners, but we're also gonna taper the corners. It's something I like to do when I've got something that's kind of thick.
Yeah, I'm a taperer too.
A taperer. Yeah, so we're gonna clip the corners and then taper them a little bit extra. So just don't wanna clip off any of our lovely stitching. We're going to do this for all of the corners at the bottom. You could do it at the top too. It makes it
Just makes it a little easier
Yeah.
Easier to turn.
Yeah.
All right. Taper and clip, taper and clip. There we go.
All right, so now it's just about time to be done. So we're going to turn the exterior right side out, leave the lining that way.
Okay.
Turn the exterior right side out. This is where it starts to look like an actual iPad
I know.
cover.
I love it when this stuff starts happening.
And you can use that point turner if you like to stick down in here and make those points kind of come out. They do a pretty good job, but you could try to get those down in there and make it come out a little bit more.
There you go.
Ta-da! Okay, so looks like this. And this, you can kind of do a little trial run to see what it's going to look like.
A little visual.
Yes, and then you're going to take this with the flap back against the backing, and you're going to stuff it down in this lining. And it's going to take a little bit of wrestling. We're going to stuff this down in here. Sometimes it helps to fold it in half and then stuff it down in. And that flap is going to stay down. You don't want the flap to be sticking out, otherwise you'll sew it incorrectly. So the flap lays down in there.
Okay.
And then we're going to pin. You can press these seams open if you want. Sometimes people like to just push one to the front and one to the back, like make one seam come toward the front and one to the back. One thing I like to use if I do want to press is a seam roll.
Oh, okay.
You can stick it, obviously you do it before you stuff the exterior into the lining, but you can stuff this into your project and then your iron can lay right on top and press that seam open without it kind of messing up what's down here. So it's a seam roll, and I happen to use, some people use it for clothes, but I use it all the time for bags.
I was going to say that's
It's
one
a
of those
clothing,
but it would work great for a bag.
Yeah. So you're going to pin at the side seams and a couple places around the top.
So I'm just going to nest these seams then,
Mm-hmm.
making them over, scooch them up close.
Yep.
And put a pin in there.
Yep. I usually do one on each side and then maybe one in the front and one in the back in the center.
We're so close.
So close. You can feel it.
All right, you got that one on. I think this one's going to lay fine.
Okay. You'll want to use the free arm on your machine if it has one, so that kind of helps you to kind of just sew around.
This is what she means when she says free arm. We take off our little case, and then we can put our little bag right around there. And her 1/2 inching still?
1/2 inch. Mm-hmm.
All right.
All the way around. And when it goes over that flap, it is going to be thick, so it might kind of help to slow down if you have to, but it will sew all the way around. No need to leave an opening. There we go.
I'm going to back stitch right there. And I think we're done. Good to go.
Yes.
Take out our pins.
Take out the pins, and you're going to pull it through that opening that you left in the lining. And some of the seams and some of the seams may kind of go pop, but that's all right. We can fix them. We'll close that opening here in a minute.
All right, I feel like I am wrestling. All right, here we go.
Ta-da.
That's our lining.
Yep.
And we're going to poke out those corners.
Poke out those corners.
Now, how do you close the bottom of your bag?
I like to just tuck it in
And then sew straight across.
And if you do like to press your seams open before you do this step that we just did, if you had pressed them open, then they're already kind of trained to tuck in.
Okay.
But I just do it like a close edge stitch right there
Okay,
along.
I can do that.
Yep. You could hand sew it closed if you wanted to, if you didn't want it to
If
see.
you were
but
crazy.
You're crazy. That is true.
I'm like, this way it's much better. Just so
Yeah,
straight
no one's
across.
going to see it. It's at the very bottom of the lining. No one's going to see it.
And actually, if you go all the way across, they'll think you top stitched.
That's
the
exactly
outside of
right.
your bag.
It was purposeful.
That's right.
So you just stuff it down in there.
right.
And some people like to skip this step, but I am a stickler for it. You want to press that opening nice and neat, because I think that is what is the difference between handmade and homemade, is like really making it look professional. Get that pressing,
Yeah.
get the iron in there. And you'll kind of work this with your fingertips if you can, like your thumb and your forefingers, just to kind of get that nice and flat. And then we're going to go back to the machine and use that same free arm of the machine where we took the little accessory tray out, and you're going to sew it all the way around. You can use like a 1/4 inch.
Okay.
And you know how we used the edge stitch earlier, edge or ditch foot for that top stitching? A lot of quilters have those wonderful 1/4 inch feet with the guides. It's great to use for
That's
this.
a perfect one.
Because then
Yeah.
it's going to ride right along that thick seam. So you're just going to slide it on there. I like to start at the back, just behind that seam, like just behind this seam.
Okay. We'll do that.
Sometimes starting on the seam can be tricky.
And I am just going to use my foot,
Yep.
the edge of my foot as
That's perfect.
my seam, and just start.
All the way around.
I love it when I get to do a project like this because it's so different from what I normally do.
Yeah, and it's useful. Like it's instantly usable.
Yeah.
It's a great gift. You can make several of them for one of those fat 1/4 packs.
Yeah, what do you think? How many do you think you can make? Like 8 of them
I
out of
think
there? or
you can
something?
make at least 5, probably even
bunch.
8, depending on how you put the fabrics together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's quite a bit of presents right
Yes,
there.
it is.
All right, I'm going to back stitch right here. Just
Yep.
a few stitches and cut.
Ta-da. Okay.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that is one of the things when I started sewing. Of course, I was a clothing sewer, but I didn't want my stuff to look homemade, and
Yep.
it's these finishing tips that really
It is.
that really
the
make
pressing and the top stitching, they really make a big difference. And I think interfacing too makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the magical moment. You'll put your device in here and you can measure
Let's
to
see
where
if-
you want
Should
to
we
go.
see if it fits? Oh, here it is.
All right, so we'll slide this down in, fits perfectly,
awesome.
and then you can close it over here and see where you want the button, where the center of the buttonhole is, and you can just kind of mark it with a pin.
Okay.
So I'm just going to kind of put the pin right in the middle there and just put a little dot,
All right.
because now we know where to put our button.
We sure do.
All right, we'll take this out for the sewing, the button.
Yeah,
And
that's
you
a good
could, you could, if you had a flat button with just the 2 holes, or with 4, you can use the button foot or the regular standard presser foot of your machine. And I know you think you've done this before, where you sew the zigzag back
Yeah.
and forth with no stitch length, but a nice wide stitch.
Right.
You want to like lower it by hand to make sure it's not going to run the needle through the button.
That's
because
right.
That would be bad. But since this button, if you can see it, it has
It's recessed.
It's recessed down in there, and we wouldn't be able to do that. So we're going to have to sew it by hand to sew it on there.
Okay.
And then we'll be done. It will be all
Awesome.
perfect and done. It will look just like this one right here.
That is so cool. So here, look how beautiful this is. I mean, how easy and quick. The other thing I wanted to point out is this one has no button, but
has Velcro.
like if you're a chicken and you don't want to do the buttonhole, but I promise you that was so easy.
Yep.
And so this project actually comes out of this book
It
we have
does,
over here.
yeah,
And this is Shea's new book, The School of Sewing, and it's just an awesome book.
Thanks.
And if you look around behind us, we have all kinds of projects that are in this book. How many projects are in this book?
There are 12, and it's actually
Including this, right?
Including the quilt. So
Including
it's
the
me
quilt.
teaching my 8 friends and neighbors how to sew over the course of a year. We
Oh,
got
very
together
cool.
once a month, and we made small projects like this that they could finish in class, and most of them are able to be gifted to other people.
Well, and the fact that you took a year to do it means that everybody really got to try
They
everything,
did.
and it was
Yep.
really as the homework is done.
And the quilt in the back, I think that your you love to make a half square
I
triangle.
do. I love half square triangles.
And if you look in the back, we made half square triangle quilts, but because I knew everyone wouldn't want to make the exact same quilt, we have
Oh, that is
27
awesome.
different
Oh,
half
very
square
cool.
triangle layouts.
Yeah, there are
in the
so
back
many
of the
things
book.
you can
Oh,
do
yeah.
with a
Oh,
half
yeah.
square triangle. Yeah, it's really awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I have really enjoyed
Thanks,
having you
Jenny.
here today.
Thank
and
you.
I love this. This is so great. So be sure and check it out. And we hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the device bag. What are we calling it?
The tech case.
On the tech case from the Missouri Star Quilt Company.